The insurance agent's office felt too small, too warm. I shifted uncomfortably in my chair, trying not to disturb the bandages covering the left side of my face. My sister Vanessa sat beside me, the picture of distress in her designer outfit, dabbing at perfectly made-up eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief. It was horrible, she told Mr. Davidson, the insurance investigator. I was helping Sophia style her hair for her interview, and she jerked away just as I was using the curling iron. Such a terrible accident. I stared at the potted plant in the corner, counting its leaves the way my therapist had taught me to manage anxiety. 1, 2, 3. Vanessa's voice faded into background noise as she spun her story, the same one she told the emergency room staff 3 days ago. Miss Evans, Mr. Davidson's voice cut through my counting. Sophia? Could you tell me your version of events? I touched the bandage gently, remembering the searing pain, the smell of burning flesh. The accident that happened after I'd announced I was interviewing for the museum curator position Vanessa had wanted. I moved suddenly. I repeated the practiced lie. It was my fault. Mr. Davidson's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes. He opened a folder on his desk, spreading out several photographs. These are from your previous insurance claims, he said quietly. A chemical burn 2 years ago from spilled cleaning solution. Scalding from a tea accident last summer. And now this curling iron incident. Vanessa's hand found mine, squeezing too hard. A warning. Sophia's always been clumsy, she laughed, but the sound was brittle. It's kind of a family joke. Interesting, Mr. Davidson replied, pulling out more papers. Because I've been reviewing security footage from the museum where you both work. The incident seemed to coincide with some interesting timing. My heart stopped. The museum had cameras? I'd never thought. We'd always been so careful about where and when. The chemical burn occurred the day after Sophia received a promotion to senior conservator, he continued. The tea incident, right after she was chosen to lead the Renaissance exhibition. And now this, following her application for the curator position you also applied for, Ms. Evans. Vanessa's grip on my hand became painful. Are you implying something, Mr. Davidson? The burn patterns on your sister's face are perfectly straight, Ms. Evans. Consistent with deliberate application, not a jerking motion. The hospital photographs are quite clear. I closed my eyes, feeling tears leak from beneath my lashes. All these years of covering up, of protecting Vanessa, of believing that if I just worked harder, achieved less, stayed smaller, she would finally see me as a sister instead of competition. This is ridiculous. Vanessa stood up, tugging at my arm. Come on, Sophia, we're leaving. Please sit down, Ms. Evans. Mr. Davidson's voice was steel wrapped in silk. Hospital security cameras caught an interesting conversation between you and your sister before she was treated. Would you like me to play that recording? The color drained from Vanessa's face. I remembered her words in the ER parking lot. Remember what happened to Mom when she didn't stick to the story. Remember what Dad did. Family loyalty, Sophia. Always. But Mr. Davidson wasn't finished. We've also received an interesting call from your previous workplace regarding similar incidents with another employee who mysteriously resigned 3 years ago. My sister sank back into her chair, her designer outfit suddenly looking like costume armor, cracking at the seams. Sophia. Mr. Davidson turned to me, his voice gentler. We have enough evidence to deny this insurance claim. But more importantly, we have enough to involve law enforcement. The choice of how to proceed is yours. For the first time in years, I looked at my sister, really looked at her. Vanessa had always been the golden child, blessed with beauty, charm, and our parents' unconditional support. Every success I achieved threatened her position, and she'd made sure I paid for each one. It was just a little discipline. Vanessa suddenly snapped, her mask cracking completely. She needs to learn her place. In our family, there's a natural order to things. I'm the eldest. I'm supposed to achieve things first. She keeps stepping out of line. Mr. Davidson pressed a button on his desk phone. Please send in Officer Martinez. Sophia. Vanessa turned to me, her eyes wild. Tell them it was an accident. Tell them. Remember what Dad always says about family loyalty. But as the police officer entered the room, I touched my bandaged face again and thought about the real meaning of loyalty, about how family shouldn't mean fear. Mr. Davidson, I said, my voice stronger than I expected. I'd like to tell you what really happened. Not just this time, but all the others too. As I began to speak, I watched Vanessa's perfectly crafted world start to crumble. The truth, like acid, was about to burn through years of carefully constructed lies. And for the first time, I wasn't afraid of the scars it would leave. The next 48 hours unfolded like a hurricane, destroying everything familiar in its path. After my statement to Mr. Davidson and Officer Martinez, the investigation expanded rapidly. Security footage from the museum revealed a pattern that made even seasoned detectives wince. Vanessa had been careful about the camera's blind spots, but she couldn't hide everything. There were moments caught on film, her following me into empty galleries, the way I flinched whenever she approached, the calculated timing of each accident following my successes. "We've interviewed your former colleague, Jessica Porter," Detective Lang told me during our second meeting. She pushed a photograph across the table. Jessica, who had resigned 3 years ago after a series of suspicious accidents. "She's willing to testify." I remembered Jessica. She had been brilliant, rising quickly through the museum's ranks until Vanessa felt threatened. Then came the incidents, damaged artwork that was blamed on Jessica, mysterious falls, and finally, a suspicious car brake failure that convinced her to leave town. "Your sister had quite a system," Detective Lang continued. "She made sure each incident looked accidental while sending clear messages. The chemical burn after your promotion? The chemicals were from your own conservation lab. The tea scalding? It happened in the break room where you just presented your exhibition plans. The police had searched Vanessa's apartment and found her journals. Years of detailed entries, not about regret or guilt, but about strategy. She documented everything. How to make injuries look accidental, which security cameras to avoid, even how to manipulate our parents into maintaining the family's code of silence." Speaking of our parents, the reaction was exactly as I'd expected. Mother called in a fury, not about my injuries, but about the shame I was bringing to the family. "How dare you betray your sister like this?" she hissed through the phone. "After everything we've done for you." "Everything you've done," I replied, surprising myself with my calm. "You mean like the time Vanessa pushed me down the stairs and you told the doctor I was going through a clumsy phase? Or when she ruined my college art portfolio and you said it was a sign I should choose a more practical career?" Father's approach was different. He tried bargaining. He showed up at my apartment with blank checks and promises to pay for reconstructive surgery for my face if I would just be reasonable and drop the charges. "Think about Vanessa's future," he pleaded. "This will ruin her career, her reputation." "She ruined those herself," I said, closing the door on him. The museum put us both on administrative leave, but their internal investigation revealed more than anyone expected. Other employees came forward with stories of intimidation and suspicious accidents. Vanessa's campaign of terror hadn't been limited to just me and Jessica. Mr. Davidson, the insurance investigator who had first cracked the case, continued to support me through the process. He connected me with victims' advocacy groups and recommended an excellent attorney when Vanessa's lawyer tried to pressure me into a settlement. "The insurance industry sees cases like this more often than you'd think," he told me over coffee. "Family violence disguised as accidents, carefully staged for insurance claims. But your sister made one crucial mistake." "What was that?" "She got too confident. The burn pattern on your face. It was too perfect, too deliberate. She stopped trying to hide her real intent." The preliminary hearing was scheduled for next month, but the evidence was already overwhelming. Vanessa's lawyer was pushing for a plea deal, trying to avoid a trial that would expose every calculated detail of her actions. 1 week after my statement, I returned to my apartment to find a package. Inside was my old sketchbook from college, the one that had mysteriously disappeared before my art school interview. The note with it was from Jessica Porter. "Your sister gave this to me to destroy," she wrote. "I couldn't do it. I've been keeping it safe, waiting for the right time. Maybe now you can finally pursue the dreams she tried to steal." I opened the sketchbook, touching the old drawings with trembling fingers. Dreams of being an art curator, of combining my love for conservation with my passion for creation. Dreams Vanessa had systematically crushed, all pushing me towards safer roles that wouldn't compete with her ambitions. That evening, I sat at my desk and began to draw again. Bandages still on my face, but my hands steady. The museum's board had reached out, offering me the curator position once the legal proceedings were complete. They wanted to make things right. As I sketched, I thought about scars, not just the physical ones Vanessa had left, but the deeper marks of years of systematic abuse disguised as sibling rivalry. Both kinds would heal, leaving marks that would remind me not of pain, but of survival. My phone buzzed with a text from Detective Lang. Second victim from her previous workplace just came forward. Your testimony broke the dam. I looked at my reflection in the window, seeing beyond the bandages to the strength beneath. Vanessa had tried to break me, piece by piece, accident by accident. Instead, she had created evidence of her own undoing, one scar at a time. 1 year later, I stood in the museum's main gallery supervising the installation of our new exhibition, Restoration, the Art of Healing. My face had healed, leaving a faint scar that traced my jawline like a signature. I'd chosen not to have reconstructive surgery. Some marks deserved to tell their stories. Vanessa had taken a plea deal, 5 years in prison, followed by extensive probation and mandatory psychiatric treatment. The investigation had uncovered victims from every stage of her life, dating back to her college years. The pattern was always the same. Anyone she saw as competition became a target for her carefully orchestrated accidents. During the sentencing hearing, she'd finally spoken. Detective Lang visited occasionally, keeping me updated on the ongoing investigations. 3 more cases had been linked to Vanessa from her college years, each victim now finding their voice after years of silence. You know what the real tragedy is? Lang had said during her last visit. She was talented enough to succeed on her own. All that energy she spent hurting others could have built something remarkable. My phone buzzed with a message from Mr. Davidson, program implementing new screening protocols for suspicious accident patterns. Your case study made the difference. I walked through the gallery one last time before leaving, stopping at each piece. Tomorrow, the exhibition would open to the public. Critics would analyze the art, visitors would admire the restoration work, but few would know the deeper meaning behind its theme. Near the exit, I placed a small piece, my first completed artwork since college. It showed a broken mirror being rebuilt, each sharp edge transformed into something beautiful. The title card read simply, "Some scars tell stories of survival." Outside, the evening air was cool on my face. I touched my scar again, no longer hiding it behind makeup or my hair. It had become part of my story, a reminder that sometimes the worst accidents aren't accidents at all, and that the strongest family isn't always the one you're born into. My new family was different, built from supporters like Jessica, Mr. Davidson, Detective Lang, and countless others who had helped expose the truth. They had shown me that real loyalty doesn't require silence, and real love never leaves scars. As I drove home, I passed the street that led to our old family house. I didn't turn that way anymore. My path led forward, marked not by accidents and lies, but by choice and truth. Some wounds leave scars, but scars can become strength, and broken things can be restored into something even more beautiful than before. Stop being dramatic, Amanda. Your sister would never do something like that. My mother's dismissive tone cut through the hospital room as I lay there, my vision still blurry and my head pounding. In the corner, my sister Olivia stood with her arms crossed, that familiar smirk playing on her lips. I'm Amanda Collins, 24, and I've spent my entire life being told I'm too sensitive, dramatic, or attention-seeking. But this time was different. This time, I knew exactly what had happened, even if my family refused to believe me. It started at our monthly family dinner. Everything seemed normal. Mom's lasagna, Dad's bad jokes, and Olivia's subtle jabs at my life choices. I'd recently been promoted to lead researcher at a pharmaceutical lab, while Olivia, 2 years younger, was still finding herself on our parents' dime. Another late night at the lab? Olivia asked, her voice dripping with fake concern as she poured me a glass of wine. You should really get out more, live a little. I took a sip, noticing something slightly off about the taste, but Mom had already launched into her favorite topic. When was I going to settle down and give her grandchildren? I ignored the strange bitter aftertaste, attributing it to the new wine brand. 20 minutes later, the room started spinning. I don't feel right, I mumbled, gripping the table. My parents exchanged knowing looks, the same ones they'd shared since we were kids whenever they thought I was being theatrical. Maybe if you didn't work so much, you could handle a glass of wine, Olivia suggested sweetly. But through my increasingly blurred vision, I caught the gleam in her eyes. The next thing I knew, I was on the floor, my body convulsing. The last thing I heard before everything went black was Olivia's voice. "See, always has to be the center of attention." I woke up in a hospital, my parents hovering nearby, their faces a mix of annoyance and embarrassment. "The doctors say it was probably just exhaustion," Mom explained, patting my hand condescendingly. "You always push yourself too hard." But I knew better. I'd been working with chemical compounds long enough to recognize the symptoms. She put something in my drink. I insisted, my voice hoarse. Olivia spiked my wine. "Here we go again," Dad sighed, running a hand through his gray hair. "Always blaming your sister for everything." Olivia stepped forward, tears welling up in her perfect green eyes. "How could you accuse me of something so horrible? I'm your sister." Her performance was flawless. It always had been. Growing up, Olivia had mastered the art of torment. She'd break my things and cry about accidentally finding them broken. She'd push me down the stairs and sob about how I tripped. Every time, my parents believed her golden child over me, their difficult daughter. But this time was different. This time, I had science on my side. When the nurse came in to check my vitals, I grabbed her hand. "I need a toxicology screen," I whispered. "Please, I know something was in my drink." The nurse looked at me, then at my family, before nodding slightly. "Dr. Matthews already ordered one, honey. Standard procedure for unexplained collapses." Relief flooded through me. Finally, there would be proof. "This is ridiculous," Mom declared, gathering her designer purse. "We're not going to sit here and indulge these paranoid fantasies. Olivia, let's go get some coffee while your sister calms down." As they left the room, Olivia lingered behind for a moment. The caring sister act dropped, replaced by the cold smile I knew too well. "You know what your problem is, sis," she whispered. "You never learn to just stay in your lane. Always trying to outshine me with your fancy job and perfect life. Sometimes people need a little reminder of their place." I stared at her, finally understanding. This wasn't just her usual cruelty. She'd actually tried to hurt me because I was succeeding in life. Because for once, I was doing better than her. "The blood test will show what you did," I said firmly. She laughed, the sound like ice cracking. "Please, it'll be your word against mine. Who do you think they'll believe? They never choose you." As she sauntered out, her words rang in my ears. She was right, they never did choose me. But maybe they wouldn't have a choice this time. I reached for my phone, hands shaking slightly, and called the one person who had always believed me. My best friend Kate, a detective with the local police. "I need your help," I said when she answered, "and I need you to get here before those test results come back." "On my way," she replied without hesitation. "Don't let them discharge you." I lay back against the hospital pillows, my head still fuzzy but my mind clearer than it had been in years. Olivia had finally gone too far, and this time I had proof growing in a lab vial, one molecule at a time. The game was about to change. Kate arrived before my family returned, her detective badge glinting under the harsh hospital lights. She took one look at my pale face and clenched her jaw. "Tell me everything," she said, pulling out her notepad. I explained about the wine, the bitter taste, Olivia's behavior, and years of similar incidents that had been dismissed. As I spoke, Kate's expression grew darker. "I'm getting security footage from a hospital entrance and parking lot," she said, "and I'm having a word with Dr. Matthews about expediting those test results." Just then, my parents and Olivia returned. Mom's face immediately soured at the sight of Kate's uniform. "What's this now?" Dad demanded. "Amanda, you called the police? This is a family matter." "Detective Wilson," Kate introduced herself formally. "I'm here investigating a potential case of intentional poisoning." Olivia's smirk faltered for a split second before she burst into tears. "How could you do this to me?" she sobbed, clutching Mom's arm. "Your own sister." "Mrs. Collins," Kate addressed my mother, ignoring Olivia's performance. "Were you aware that your daughter Olivia has had 3 restraining orders filed against her by former roommates?" The room went silent. Mom's face paled. That's impossible." "All filed in the last 2 years," Kate continued, reading from her notes. "All citing similar incidents of food tampering and suspicious accidents." Those girls were jealous. Olivia protested, but her voice had lost its confident edge. "They were trying to ruin my reputation. Just like Amanda's trying to ruin your reputation now, Kate asked coolly. Interesting pattern. Before anyone could respond, Dr. Matthews entered, holding a file. His expression was grim. I have the preliminary toxicology results, he announced. We found significant levels of benzodiazepines in Miss Collins' system, specifically a type commonly used to sedate patients. This combination with alcohol could have been fatal. Mom sank into a chair while Dad stood frozen. Olivia's tears dried instantly. That's impossible, she stammered. Amanda probably took something herself. She works in a lab, she has access to drugs. Actually, Kate interjected, the specific drug found isn't one used in Amanda's research facility. However, it is prescribed to you, Olivia, for your anxiety attacks. I watched as the careful facade my sister had maintained for years began to crack. Her eyes darted between our parents, desperately seeking their usual support, but they seemed stunned into silence. Security footage shows you making 3 trips to your car during dinner, Kate continued. Would you like to explain what you were retrieving? I want a lawyer, Olivia snapped, her mask completely falling away. I'm not saying another word. Olivia? Mom's voice was barely a whisper. Tell me you didn't. But Olivia's silence spoke volumes. For the first time in our lives, our parents were seeing her true face. Mrs. Collins, Dr. Matthews said firmly, your daughter Amanda could have died. The amount of sedatives in her system, combined with alcohol, could have stopped her heart. This wasn't a prank or a cry for attention. It was attempted murder. Dad stumbled backward, looking like he aged 10 years in 10 minutes. All those times, he muttered. All those accidents Amanda told us about. Were they really accidents, Mr. Collins? Kate asked, though we all knew the answer. Security arrived to escort Olivia out of the room. As they led her away, she turned to her parents one last time, desperate for their intervention. But this time, there was no defense, no dismissal of my claims, no protection for their precious golden child. I did it for you, she screamed as they pulled her away. She was always making us look bad with her perfect job and her perfect life. You never loved me as much as her. I watched my parents crumble under the weight of their own willful blindness. Years of ignored warnings, dismissed concerns, and enabled behavior had led to this moment. Amanda, Mom choked out, reaching for my hand. We didn't know. We didn't want to see. I pulled my hand away. You didn't want to know, I corrected her. There's a difference. Kate squeezed my shoulder supportively. We'll need to take your formal statement once you're feeling stronger. For now, rest. You're safe. As my parents left the room, shoulders slumped in shame, I felt no satisfaction in their guilt, only relief that the truth was finally out and sadness for the family bonds that might never be repaired. But at least now they knew. At least now they couldn't pretend anymore. 3 months after the hospital incident, I sat in the courthouse waiting room, my hands clasped tightly in my lap. The preliminary hearing for Olivia's case was today, and despite my outward calm, my heart was racing. You don't have to stay for the whole thing, Kate assured me, sitting beside me in her formal police uniform. Your statement is enough. But I needed to stay. I needed to see this through. My parents entered, looking older and more subdued than I'd ever seen them. Mom had lost weight, and Dad's hair had gone completely gray. They'd been trying to reach out over the past months, calling, sending letters, even attempting to visit my apartment. Each time, I'd maintained my distance, not ready to bridge the gap their years of denial had created. Amanda, Mom started, taking a tentative step toward me. We've been seeing a family therapist. We know now that we failed you. Both of you, really. I really looked at her, and saw something I'd never seen before, genuine remorse. We enabled her, Dad added, his voice rough. We made excuses because it was easier than facing the truth, and you paid the price for our weakness. Before I could respond, the court officer called us in. As we filed into the courtroom, I caught my first glimpse of Olivia since that night. She sat at the defendant's table, wearing a beige pantsuit that made her look impossibly young and vulnerable. Exactly the image she was going for. But something was different. The confident smirk was gone, replaced by a tightness around her eyes that spoke of fear. Real fear, perhaps for the first time in her life. The evidence was overwhelming. Kate had done her job thoroughly, uncovering not just the recent poisoning but a pattern of behavior dating back years. Former roommates came forward with their stories. Old medical records showed suspicious accidents. Even Olivia's ex-boyfriend testified about her threatening behavior when he tried to end their relationship. When it was my turn to testify, I spoke clearly and calmly, detailing not just the poisoning but the years of escalating incidents that led to it. As I spoke, I watched my parents' faces crumple with each revealed detail they had dismissed or ignored. The defendant didn't just attempt to harm her sister, the prosecutor concluded. She systematically terrorized her while hiding behind a carefully constructed facade of innocence enabled by those around her. The judge's decision was swift and firm. Olivia would undergo psychiatric evaluation pending trial, with no contact orders in place for all her previous victims, including me. As they led her away, Olivia finally dropped her act completely. "You think this changes anything?" She spat in my direction. "You'll always be the one who tore this family apart." But her words didn't hurt anymore. They were just the desperate cries of someone who'd finally lost control. Outside the courthouse, standing in the bright autumn sunlight, my parents approached me again. "We've sold the house," Mom said quietly. "Too many bad memories. We're moving closer to the city. Closer to you if you let us try to rebuild." "We know we don't deserve a second chance," Dad added, "but we're hoping you might give us one anyway." I studied their faces, the hope, the regret, the genuine desire to make amends. "I'm starting therapy too," I told them. "Every Tuesday. If you're serious about rebuilding, you can meet me for coffee after my sessions." Small steps. The relief on their faces was palpable. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But it was a start. Kate drove me home, both of us processing the day's events. "You know what amazes me?" she said as we pulled up to my apartment. "Through everything, you never lost your compassion. You wanted justice, not revenge." I thought about that as I entered my apartment, immediately greeted by my newly adopted rescue cat, Luna. She'd been abused by her previous owners, yet still found it in herself to trust again. Maybe she had the right idea. That evening, I received a text from Mom. Found this while packing. Attached was a photo of me at my college graduation, beaming with pride. I remembered that day, how Olivia had tried to overshadow it by announcing her plans to move to Paris. How our parents had cut my celebration dinner short to discuss her travel arrangements. But looking at it now, I saw something different. I saw a young woman who had achieved something remarkable, despite everything. Who had built a life and career she was proud of, who had found true friends who believed in her, who had survived and thrived. I saved the photo and texted back. "Coffee next Tuesday at 3, don't be late." Sometimes healing comes not from forgetting the past, but from facing it head-on and choosing to move forward anyway. My family would never be what it once was, but maybe, just maybe, it could be something new, something real. And this time, I would be strong enough to make sure the truth stayed in the light. "Emma, stop being dramatic. Your sister would never do that." My mother's dismissive voice echoed through our kitchen as I tried, once again, to explain why my insulin readings weren't making sense. "I'm 24, have been managing my type 1 diabetes since I was 12. And for the first time in years, my numbers were dangerously erratic." Standing there, clutching my glucose meter with shaking hands, I watched my sister Sophie smirk behind her mother's back. At 20, she'd always been the perfect child, straight A's, popular, and most importantly in our family's eyes, healthy. "Mom, I know my body. These readings don't make sense. Yesterday my sugar was perfect before dinner. I took my usual dose, and 2 hours later I was dangerously low. Today, the same dose sent me skyrocketing." My voice trembled with frustration and fear. "Maybe you're just stressed about your new job," Sophie chimed in, her voice dripping with false concern. "You know stress affects blood sugar." I did know that. I knew everything about managing my condition. I had to, but this was different. These swings were too extreme, too unpredictable. And they only started happening when Sophie moved back home after dropping out of college. "I'm keeping my insulin in my room from now on," I announced, gathering my supplies. "Now you're just being ridiculous," Mom snapped. "What's next? Accusing your sister of trying to poison you? She's your family." Family. The word felt hollow. Family was supposed to protect you, not gaslight you about your own medical condition. But in our house, keeping up appearances always mattered more than facing uncomfortable truths. That night, I double-checked my insulin pens before taking my evening dose. Everything looked normal, but something felt off. I'd been a diabetic long enough to trust my instincts. After injecting, I set up my phone to record my room while I slept, something I'd never thought I'd have to do in my own home. The next morning, my blood sugar was through the roof, despite taking my usual dose. Checking my phone footage, my heart stopped. At 2 a.m., a shadow had crept into my room, moving directly to where I kept my insulin. Sophie, thinking I was asleep, had switched my insulin pens. With trembling hands, I called my endocrinologist, Dr. Martinez. She'd been my doctor since my diagnosis and was the only person who'd always taken me seriously. "These numbers are concerning, Emma," she said after I sent her my readings. "Can you come in today? I want to run some tests." At the clinic, I showed Dr. Martinez the video. Her usually calm demeanor shifted to something more serious. "Emma, tampering with insulin can be lethal. This isn't sibling rivalry, it's attempted murder." The blood tests she ordered weren't just routine checks. She was looking for evidence of insulin manipulation, dilution, contamination, anything that could explain my erratic readings. "Keep detailed records of everything," she advised. "And Emma, don't take any insulin you haven't personally obtained from the pharmacy. I'm calling one in right now. Pick it up yourself." When I got home, Sophie was in the kitchen with Mom, both laughing over some social media post. The scene looked so normal, so deceivingly peaceful. How could they not see what was happening? "How was your appointment?" Mom asked casually. "Fine," I replied, gripping my new insulin pens tightly. "Just routine." Sophie's eyes flickered to the pharmacy bag in my hand, something dark passing across her face. "Still convinced someone's messing with your medicine?" she asked sweetly. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. Dr. Martinez's office. The preliminary results were in, and they needed me to come back immediately. Something showed up in the tests, something that couldn't be explained by normal diabetes management. "Actually," I said, meeting Sophie's gaze steadily, "we're about to find out exactly what's been happening to my insulin. Dr. Martinez ran some interesting tests today." The color drained from Sophie's face, and for the first time, I saw real fear in her eyes. Mom, oblivious as ever, just sighed. "Emma, enough with the accusations. Your sister loves you." I grabbed my keys, my hand steady for the first time in weeks. "We'll see about that, Mom. We'll see exactly how much she loves me when the lab results come back." As I drove to the clinic, my phone exploded with texts from Sophie. "It was just a joke. You're overreacting. Please don't do this to me." But I didn't respond. After weeks of gaslighting and fear, of being told I was paranoid and dramatic, justice was finally within reach. Dr. Martinez had proof, real medical evidence that couldn't be dismissed as sibling rivalry or stress. My sister had messed with the wrong thing. She might have fooled our parents, but she couldn't fool science. And now, everything was about to change. The clinic's fluorescent lights felt harsh as I sat in Dr. Martinez's office, staring at the lab results spread across her desk. Each page told a story more horrifying than the last. "The analysis shows significant tampering," Dr. Martinez explained, her voice professional but edged with concern. "We found traces of water dilution in some samples, and more disturbing, household cleaning products in others. Emma, this wasn't just manipulation. This was deliberate poisoning." My hands trembled as I picked up one of the reports. The clinical language couldn't mask the truth. My sister had been systematically trying to harm me. "I've already contacted the police," Dr. Martinez continued. "This is a criminal matter now. Detective Anderson will be here shortly to take your statement." As if on cue, my phone started ringing. "Mom." I declined the call, but the text started immediately. "Emma, come home right now. Sophie is crying. How could you involve the police? She says it wasn't that serious. You're tearing this family apart." Dr. Martinez noticed my distress. "Your mother's reaction is unfortunately common in these situations. Families often want to minimize or deny abuse, especially when it comes from within." "They never believed me," I whispered, fighting back tears. "Every time I tried to tell them something was wrong, they made me feel crazy." The detective arrived shortly after, a stern-looking woman with kind eyes. She reviewed the medical evidence while I recounted everything: the erratic blood sugar readings, the video footage, Sophie's suspicious behavior, and our parents' dismissal of my concerns. "This is serious. Detective Anderson stated. Insulin tampering can be lethal. We'll need to bring your sister in for questioning immediately. Just then, my phone buzzed with a text from Sophie that made my blood run cold. If you do this, I'll tell them about the accident last year. The accident. My stomach churned as I remembered. Last year, Sophie had been driving drunk and hit a parked car. I'd helped her cover it up, convinced by her tears and promises to get help. Now she was using it against me. I showed the text to Detective Anderson. Classic manipulation tactic, she noted. She's trying to maintain control. But Emma, whatever happened last year doesn't justify attempted murder. By the time I left the clinic, multiple officers were headed to our house with a warrant. Dr. Martinez had admitted me to the hospital for monitoring, concerned about potential lasting effects from the tampering. You'll be safe here, she assured me, and we'll monitor your blood sugar properly. In my hospital room, the text from my parents continued. Dad, this is ridiculous. We raised you better than this. Mom, the police are here. How could you do this to your sister? Sophie, I hate you. You've ruined everything. I turned off my phone, exhausted by their collective denial. The hospital staff had strict instructions, no visitors without my explicit approval. For the first time in weeks, I felt safe. Hours later, Detective Anderson visited with an update. Sophie had been arrested, and the evidence they found in her room was damning. She'd kept detailed notes about her tampering, almost like a scientific experiment. They also found research on her computer about insulin overdoses and their effects. She's facing serious charges, the detective explained. And your parents may face charges too for endangerment since they dismissed clear warning signs. My parents, despite everything, part of me ached for them. They created this situation with years of enabling Sophie while dismissing my concerns. Their perfect daughter had turned out to be capable of calculated attempted murder, and their dramatic diabetic daughter had been telling the truth all along. Dr. Martinez came by later to check my readings. Your numbers are stabilizing, she said, reviewing my chart. But Emma, we need to talk about long-term safety plans. You can't go back to that house. I nodded, already having reached the same conclusion. My friend Olivia had offered me her spare room, and my job could be done remotely. I had options, good ones that didn't involve living in fear. I know, I replied. I never thought it would come to this. That my own sister would. Family abuse is complex, she said gently, but you did the right thing by speaking up. You may have saved your own life. That night, alone in my hospital room, I finally read the last text from Sophie before turning off my phone. Nobody will believe you anyway. They never have. But she was wrong. The blood tests had believed me. The police had believed me. Dr. Martinez had believed me. And finally, most importantly, I had believed myself. 6 months later, I sat in a courtroom, watching Sophie plead guilty to attempted first-degree murder. Her designer outfit and tearful performance couldn't hide the truth anymore. Not from the judge, not from our parents, and certainly not from me. The prosecutor presented the evidence methodically, my medical records, the contaminated insulin samples, Sophie's detailed notes, and the video footage. But it was her internet search history that finally shattered our parents' denial. How long to die from insulin overdose? Can insulin poisoning look natural? How to tamper with diabetes medication? Mom sobbed in the gallery while Dad sat stone-faced. They'd finally been forced to see their perfect daughter for who she really was. The psychological evaluation had revealed what I'd suspected all along. Sophie had been jealous of the attention my diabetes required, even though that attention had mostly consisted of medical appointments and careful monitoring. Your Honor, Sophie's attorney began. My client was suffering from severe mental health issues. But the judge cut him off. Miss Andrews, your premeditation is clearly documented. This wasn't a cry for help. It was a calculated attempt to end your sister's life. When Sophie was sentenced to 15 years with mandatory psychiatric treatment, I felt no joy, just relief. The nightmare was finally over. Outside the courthouse, my parents approached me for the first time since the arrest. Emma, Mom started, her voice breaking. We should have listened. We failed you, Dad added, looking years older than he had 6 months ago. I took a deep breath, remembering my therapist's words about setting boundaries. Yes, you did. You failed me for years. Every time you dismissed my concerns, Every time you called me dramatic, you showed me that my safety meant nothing compared to keeping up appearances. We can change, Mom pleaded. We're in counseling now. Please give us another chance. I looked at them, really looked at them. They seemed smaller somehow. Their perfect family facade crumbled to dust. Maybe someday, I said finally, but right now, I need space to heal. My new life was everything I'd never dared to hope for. Living with Olivia had shown me what real support looked like. My blood sugar stabilized, and Dr. Martinez praised my improved numbers at every checkup. You're thriving, she said during my latest appointment. I'm proud of you, Emma. I'd started a support group for survivors of family medical abuse, surprised to find how many others had similar stories. We met weekly, sharing our experiences and healing together. Some days were harder than others, but I was no longer alone. The letter arrived 3 months after the sentencing. Sophie's handwriting was as perfect as ever. Dear Emma, I'm working with my therapist to understand why I did what I did. They say I have severe narcissistic tendencies and sociopathic behaviors. I always hated how your diabetes made you special. I wanted you gone. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it, but I am sorry. Sophie. I showed the letter to my therapist, who helped me process my complicated feelings about it. You don't owe her a response, she reminded me. Your healing doesn't require her participation. She was right. I filed the letter away and focused on my future. My blog about diabetes management had gained a following, and I've been invited to speak at medical conferences about patient advocacy. My story was helping others find their voice. Last week, I moved into my own apartment. As I arranged my insulin supplies in their designated spot, I realized I no longer checked for tampering or set up cameras. The fear had finally lifted. My phone buzzed. A text from Olivia. Housewarming party this weekend. The whole support group wants to celebrate. I smiled, typing back a quick yes. Before, family had meant people who hurt you and called it love. Now I had a chosen family who supported and believed me. That evening, I sat on my new balcony, watching the sunset. My glucose monitor showed perfect numbers, and for the first time in years, I felt completely at peace. The truth had cost me my birth family, but it had given me something far more valuable: freedom. Dr. Martinez's words from the trial echoed in my mind. Sometimes the bravest thing we can do is speak our truth, even when those who should believe us don't. I learned that truth might hurt, but secrets could kill. My sister had tried to silence me permanently, but instead, she'd helped me find my voice. And now that voice was stronger than ever. Setting boundaries isn't betrayal, and speaking up isn't dramatic. Sometimes it's the only way to stay alive. I survived not just Sophie's attempts to kill me, but years of gaslighting and dismissal. Now finally, I was doing more than surviving. I was living. And for the first time in my life, I didn't need anyone else to validate my truth. I knew who I was, what I'd survived, and where I was going. That was more than enough.